Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're skipping all the high-level fluff and diving straight into the actual engine room of Kubernetes. If you've spent any time managing distributed systems, you already know that deploying the applications, well, that's kind of the easy part. The real nightmare is the mechanics of how these highly distributed, constantly shifting systems actually stay connected to one another. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack part 4 of our source material, specifically zeroing in on Kubernetes networking and storage. We're going to map out exactly how this underlying architecture functions using the structural flow from part 4 to guide us right through it. To set the stage here, let's look at what is arguably the central mystery of container orchestration. How do pods actually find each other? I mean, think about it. In a traditional IT environment, a server has a static IP address. It sits there happily in a rack, and its identity practically never changes. There's no waking up at 2 a.m. to frantically update your routing tables. But in Kubernetes, pods are highly ephemeral. They're constantly getting created, destroyed, and recreated across different physical or virtual machines based on demand or, node health. So if a pod's location and its IP address are literally always changing, how does a front-end web app reliably talk to a back-end database? How do we prevent absolute chaos? Well, that's the exact puzzle we're about to solve. Okay, let's dive into this by establishing the fundamental hurdles this system actually has to overcome. According to part 4 of our source text, when we talk about Kubernetes infrastructure at this level, we're essentially trying to solve 3 distinct problems. First, as we just discussed, is pod discovery, basically locating these moving targets. Second is managing how traffic flows in and out of the cluster, securely and efficiently. And third is stateful data. Because containers wipe their local state when they restart, data desperately needs a reliable way to survive. Today, we'll see how solving those first 2 networking challenges creates this perfect, flat foundation that's actually required to reliably attach stateful storage later on. To truly understand how Kubernetes answers these challenges, we have to map out the architecture. Think of the individual worker machines in your cluster, your physical servers or VMs, as separate platforms. Let's call them Node 1, Node 2, and Node 3. Inside each of those nodes are little isolated cubes. These are our pods, the absolute smallest deployable units containing your actual applications. Now, wrapping around all of them, tying these completely disparate nodes together into one ecosystem is what's called the shared network plan. And the sheer elegance of this solution really lies in one golden rule. All pods across all nodes can communicate directly on a single flat network. Let that sink in for just a second. The crucial takeaway here is that you absolutely do not need to configure complex network address translation, or NAT, just to get a pod on node 1 to talk to a pod on node 3. Goodbye, not headaches. Even though they live on completely different physical host machines, Kubernetes just abstracts that entire hardware boundary away. To the pods themselves, it feels like they're all sitting right next to each other, plugged into one giant, seamless switch. It's just a brilliant simplification of a highly complex distributed problem. Let's look under the hood to see how this translates into the actual technology, because that shared network plane doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. It's established by a component known as the CNI plugin, which stands for Container Network Interface. If you think about how all those nodes are connected, the CNI plugin is essentially the infrastructure's invisible road network. And this matters immensely to your daily workflow, because it's the software layer automating all the dirty work. It dynamically assigns IP addresses to those isolated pods, and programs all the necessary routing rules across the different nodes so that this whole flat network illusion becomes a highly functional reality. And it does it all without any manual intervention from you.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next piece of the puzzle. If you look right at the very center of this architecture, you'll find a massive hub that every single pod across all the nodes connects back to. And that is CoreDNS. That placement, it's incredibly deliberate. By putting CoreDNS right at the absolute center of the shared network plane, the system sets up the ultimate solution to our very first question: how these ephemeral pods actually locate one another when their IP addresses are constantly shifting around.
CoreDNS acts as the central system providing address discovery and routing for all those pods. Basically, think of it as the real-time dynamic GPS system for your entire cluster. Because the CNI plugin gives every pod an IP address on that flat network, CoreDNS comes in and maps those specific IP addresses to predictable, static names. So if your web front-end pod needs to reach your database pod, it doesn't need to know that the database is currently sitting on node 2 with some random IP like 10.0.5.14. Not at all. It just asks CoreDNS to connect it to the service simply named database. CoreDNS resolves that name to the current IP, routing the traffic seamlessly. Boom. It entirely solves the mystery of dynamic pod discovery. Which brings us to a foundational quote directly from part 4 of the source material. Kubernetes enforces a simple but powerful networking model. And it's precisely because this internal networking is so seamless and reliable that Kubernetes can actually successfully tackle our third challenge, storage. You see, the flat network ensures that stateful storage volumes can be dynamically attached and reattached to pods, no matter which physical node they happen to bounce to. Because the network routing is fundamentally guaranteed, the decoupled storage always knows exactly how to reach the application.
But hold on, because that beautiful simplicity introduces a really fascinating new problem. If the network is entirely flat, meaning every single pod can, by default, talk directly to literally any other pod across the entire cluster, how do you enforce security? I mean, when your application scales to thousands of pods, you certainly don't want your public-facing web container having wide-open, direct network access to your highly secure payment processing container, right? So how do we create secure boundaries in a system that was explicitly designed to have none? Well, that challenge paves the way for advanced network policies and strict traffic isolation, which is an entirely new layer of Kubernetes mastery for you to explore next. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep building.